Everyone, how are you? Yeah, awesome. Thank you for being here, and I hope you're enjoying your samosas and the tea and the company and the fellowship. And so how many of you all believe that every time you try to run away from something, life makes sure it puts you right back there until you face that fear? Yeah, it happens, right? That's what happened to me. So I decided I was not going to take maths because I'm not good at numbers. So I took science and instead became a physician in India. And then I realized as I grew up, the numbers keep coming to me, and the finances and everything. Everybody's just talking about it, and I'm just standing, no, I don't have anything to do with finances. And finally I said, I can't just keep running away. I have to tackle the fear, and that's what I've done in the past 4 or 5 months. And as you'll keep hearing about Tom and Kim, why I am here and why it's important for us to learn about finances and some of the financial disaster that we can prevent in the future. So we have the expertise here, and we'll have some quizzes in between. And Neelam has volunteered to hand out the gifts to you guys if you get it right. But I'm Nazeera, and I'm holding these chai and chat sessions every month. And you'll see the next topic on the slide. The reason is because my passion is to educate and inform. So why not pick up topics that matter to our communities? And that's what I've done so far. And briefly, you'll see the bios of our panelists on the background. But just very briefly, Jim Carson, thank you so much for being here. Actually, I used to call you Dr. Carson till he gave me approval 2 days ago. I could call you Jim, so thank you. Thank you, Jim. He is a professor of insurance and comes with a great knowledge and expertise from University of Georgia. We have Jasleen. Thank you so much for being here. Jasleen, a senior loan officer with the mortgage company, and we'll ask you more questions on that. And Kim, of course, you wear several hats. One, you are also an attorney, and the other is you're also a financial planner or an advisor. And Tom, you are the visionary behind this building, the setup, the wealth wave, and the co-founder of WFG, which is the World Financial Group. So you are a busy person. I can understand the importance you're giving to this session if you're here on a Saturday evening. And Janani, I'm sorry to say I'm younger than you because I celebrated my 18th birthday last year. So this year I'm turning 19. But as a student and an intern at CDC and an undergrad at Georgia Tech. So thank you for being here, Janani. And Render, a practicing attorney, a trial attorney. You come with a lot of experience and expertise. And also you're going to put in a humanitarian side of what it means to become a lawyer as well. And Marjay, wearing several hats with media expertise and communication and many, many other stuff going on. And for being a good friend for the past 5 years, thank you for coming from all the way from down south. So thank you. And Anilji has usually been on the other side. So you never know when you're going to be picked up and asked to be on here. But Anilji has always asked excellent questions of us. And I said, Anilji, you'll really make a great, you'll provide more expertise being on here today. So thank you. Tanya, you are the title and the escrow expert. But you also know what it means buying a home and what the process goes through. And Ravi Shahani, I'm saving the last for the best, CPA. And so thank you so much for being here with the Summit Financials and working on expertise on taxes. So thank you so much for being here. The first question, and you all please feel free anytime. You don't have to sit here, entire time. You can go grab tea, water, you have everything over there, and anytime. So, and we have the panel discussion, then there's a break, and then we'll have the takeaway lessons, and 2 of our panelists will come forward. After that, we'll have the Q&A. So you'll have a lot of time asking the session for Q&A. And so Jim, the question I wanted to ask you, or wait, hold on. Let me start with Ravi. Ravi. Ravi was almost in, oh, good, it's not me first, but there I So when have you been the happiest? And this question is for all the panelists. I might change it, but it's sort of this first question is for all the panelists.
I think so. Happiness is
Here, I want you to, sorry. If you all can share this. And if you all can share this side. You just have to speak on it.
testing. Happiness, according to me, is mostly a very, very overrated term, which is used in today's society. Happiness is, I mean, if you can be happy on a daily basis. For me, I'm happy every day, every minute here. People are looking here and there for happiness. I don't look for happiness. I find happiness in everything that is in life, yeah. So I think so it's extremely overrated a word, yeah.
Awesome, thank you, Ravi. Tanya, when have you been the happiest? If you can speak on the mic
sorry.
so the video can be recorded.
Yes, sorry.
Okay.
Honestly, I think I am at the point in my life now where I am probably the happiest. I think, you know, as you grow, you gain wisdom, and I think that you start to understand the things that are really important in life and the other things aren't so important. And, you know, I'm at a place where I've got my career and I've got my family, and I think we're just all so blessed. And I think a lot of times we take that for granted. And I think that's why now that I kind of understand that, you know, this is what life is and it's what you make of it. And I think that's why I would say probably this point in my life I'm the happiest.
Very nice. Would that mean your teenager was not as happy? I'm just teasing you.
I'm going to plead the fifth.
Go ahead, Anandji.
So, I'm the happiest first thing in the morning. When my eyes open, I always leave the blinds up and I look out the window and I see all the nature and connect with the nature, and I feel how blessed are you to get up in the morning and feel good. But from then on, it goes downhill. The good part is it starts all over again the next day. So I feel happy every day, happiest first thing in the morning.
Very nice, thank you.
I am happiest right now in my life because I believe I know who I am. I'm living my dream, and I have the privilege to help others figure out who they are and live their dreams.
Very nice, thank you.
I would say that I'm happiest when I am connecting with other people, and when I am engaged in understanding them and relating to them, and you sort of lose a sense of self and you become more concerned with the other person, and so that would be my answer. And I think for me, there's a spiritual element there. When you are truly connecting to someone else and losing your sense of self, that's when you connect to a greater being.
Very nice, thank you. So Janani, it wouldn't be fair if I asked you when were you the happiest because you still have so many years to go. So I'm changing the question, is what is your greatest fear? And that's the question I'm going to ask all of you all. And if you can speak over the mic.
I would say my greatest fear is probably never reaching a point of stability in my life. Especially as a student, things are constantly changing every day, every year. So I guess my ultimate goal, and the ultimate goal of many students, is to, you know, find stability, find a successful career, and settle down. So I guess my greatest fear is not being able to achieve that.
Awesome, thank you. Which you will, so yeah. You're a smart kid, yes.
Well, thank you. I don't have many fears, but if I had to pick one, I would say that, you know, 36 years ago when I got in our business, I decided that I was going to try and teach the world how money works. And as much as I feel like we've accomplished and done, we have so much more to do because there's more people now than there was when we started, a lot more. And we haven't even scratched the surface. Yet what we do, teaching people how money works, is still not taught in schools. And people go through their entire adult life not knowing how it works, almost by design by the financial industry. And so it's going to take somebody to turn that cause into a revolution. And revolutions need revolutionaries. And so that's my fear, is that I won't be able to get enough revolutionaries to really make a difference to change the way people view money and how it works and what it can do for them.
Great. You have all of us start with us, Tom.
Yes, I have. Thank you.
Okay, I could give the easy answer and just say spiders. Which are real, yeah, I am kind of scared of spiders. But I would say that it's that insecurity or that instability, that feeling that, you know, your whole world is going to change on you and you're not going to be able to do anything about it. Those things that you don't have control over. Now, the experts say the top 3 fears are speaking in public, so thank you, Nazeera, for having us all speak in public. Second is, you know, fear of dying, and the third one is fear of living too long and outliving your money. And I think that one of the things that we do is try and help people, not with the first one about speaking in public, but, you know, helping them create a secure environment for their family in the event of death or something unexpected happening, or this fear of outliving your money, living too long and not having enough, and being able to help people with their retirement. And spiders.
Thank you. Okay.
Okay, my greatest actually fear was 2 years ago, like when I was starting my own business. I have been in the mortgage for past 7 years, but 2 years ago I started my own mortgage company, and then the fear was if I'm going to fail or succeed. But apparently I've overcome my fear and I've succeeded, and thank God doing pretty well. And now my fear is like we keep the loans on time and close on time, and also thinking about my children to succeed in their life, which they have done pretty well, so I'm happy.
Very nice. Jim?
So I'm going to break the rules and
Okay.
answer both questions, if that's okay. So
Now you know why he's a professor.
you'll never get this microphone back. So growing up, my parents always said that happiness was having enough to do. And until Nazeera called, I had nothing to do tonight. So I'm very happy to be here. And then on the fear side, I think as I get older, one of my fears is becoming unhealthy to a point where I'm not able to do the things, you know, like this and other things to connect with people and teach my students and kind of live the way I'm living now.
Very nice. So, Jim, hold on the mic with you itself, because I'm coming to the real question. But Tom asked me, you have number of panelists. I said, I have to represent the entire life from 0 to 100. So each of you represent 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. And the person gets lucky, I represent 100 to 110 years, right? So, Jim, such with insurance, right? I guess insurance is a responsible financial plan, right? If you all will agree. And it changes as we go through different life stages, getting an insurance, right? Once you're married, once you have children, or might be life events, untowardly events like divorce or separating, and then you get old, you buy, you know, and then again your insurance. So what or how does a person know he is in the right type, or he is safe, he has the correct insurance? Or do you think a person like me would think, well, that's a waste of money, I wouldn't do it now? So how do you convince people like me who are here, who's like, well, you know, so how do I know I have the right sort of insurance at this age in my life?
So we're starting with the sexy topic first. So, and when you say insurance, of course, there's so many different kinds. And do you have a particular, you know, auto?
So in a different life stage. So what are the ones that person should have?
Okay.
And what are the ones they can sort of forfeit for now?
Yeah. How long do I have? So I guess just in a nutshell, to maybe list some of the ones that most families should have, if you kind of at least start maybe early to mid-20s and through most of adulthood, something like auto liability is going to be required. Although, as it turns out, about a quarter of drivers, so look 3 or 4 down next to you, a quarter of drivers don't purchase liability insurance on their auto. And so, but that's something that can financially devastate an individual or a household. And so the kinds of risks that can really set you back, I would say, are going to be the most important kinds of insurance. So for a young family, with one or two breadwinners, life insurance on those breadwinners since we can't replace the people, we could at least try to replace the stream of income that those individuals were producing for the family, that the family is dependent on. If you have a house, then of course homeowners insurance and the banks and the mortgage companies are going to require that. Of course, one of the sometimes overlooked is a personal umbrella policy. And so if you're held legally liable for either something to do with your property or your car, something like just to put some numbers on it, maybe $1 million worth of personal liability coverage. And you can buy most of these products for not that much. I mean, maybe far less than you'd think. And then I'll maybe just mention one more, is the risk of becoming disabled and unable to work is about 7 times higher than the chance of death. And so while most people tend to do somewhat of a decent job buying life insurance, most people don't do a good job thinking about and addressing the risk of possibly becoming disabled. And so an insurance coverage to replace at least a portion of that income if you're unable to work.
Thank you so much, Jim. So, Jasleen, the next question for you is about credit. And you're going to see that I'm going to find the words within the words. So when I started looking at credit, Tom, it had red on it. Credit. So red, like stop. But also we have to realize that credit is the one that's allowing us for financial mobility for those who can't afford in the early years, right? But tell us, is there something called a good debt or a bad debt? And because the credit doesn't come with the risk, it doesn't say there's a risk. We borrow money in the good sense or the goodwill that we'll repay it. We promise it sometimes, but at points we can't. In your line of industry, how important is the credit and probably the debt that a person owes?
I think that's a very good question because
Can you speak on the mic?
Sorry.
Yes.
Credit is the lifeline for us, for all adults and the kids who are graduating, because you need good credit is like truly what you need to get car, house, credit cards. If you have a good credit, think about it, you're going to buy a car, your interest rate versus 0%, you can get a good car if you have a good credit. Versus if the credit is not good, you can get like 10% or 9 or 7%.
You can speak to the audience.
So same with the house. When you're getting the house, the credit, the rate you get depends upon the credit you have. That's the most important component of getting the interest rate. If you have a credit over 760, 760 is a good credit, then over 700, then 680 and 600. Anything over 620 is considered bad credit. So, getting a good credit to have on your, it's really important. And house, as I said, house, car, auto, everything depends on that. And there's nothing as good credit and bad. There's a good credit in the sense getting a good interest rate on the credit, but nothing as bad credit, because if you're late on your payment, you get a bad credit. You are late, it reflects on your credit cards, it reflects on the mortgage payment, and key to getting a good credit is having all the credit card balances lower on the credit. So if you have like 5,000 balance, it's a good idea to keep less than 30%, and that will boost up your credit. Does it?
Yes, definitely. Thank you. That answers my question. And to give you credit, Kim, thank you for pulling me into this. This is a different sort of a credit. The real credit for you to help me guide, holding hands, to come so far on how I can educate others on financial literacy. 47% of Americans are sort of sometimes financially insecure, and that does not mean all of them are bad financial decision makers, right? They are sometimes looking for someone to handhold. They're looking for someone whom they can confide on at any life stages, right? Those who are they're looking for a person who's ethical, who will be able to help them based on their issues and problems. So suppose a person came to you who's gone through a financial disaster, right? And they knock on your door. what would you say to them, or do they even stand a chance?
Well, they do stand a chance. It's never too late. And I find a lot of people who, because of a lack of knowledge, because of the low level of financial literacy around the world and in this country, just don't know what they don't know. And if they sit down with someone who just explains the basic financial concepts, you know, Nazeera, when she met me, she told me the story of, you know, she's incredibly intelligent, highly educated, very well respected in several countries. And she didn't know how to work an ATM. And so
That's true. I didn't know how to work an ATM till 2 years or 3 years ago.
But you wouldn't think someone that comes with that background and experience wouldn't know something that's fairly basic financial information. But there are a lot of people in that circumstance. And it's that lack of knowledge that leads us to make uninformed or badly informed decisions so that we end up with a little bit of a mess on our hands. Nothing is beyond repair. And I think, Jocelyn, you'd say that about people who might find themselves in a bad credit situation. There are things that we can do, and number one step is get educated. And that's what Nazeera has really dedicated herself to doing, getting financially educated so that her education level on that, in that category is as high, if not more, than how she's educated in medicine and all of the other things that she's so well informed about, so she can talk to other people and set a great example. But no one is beyond getting their situation fixed. And it's never too late to get the right information. And with that, you know, either you find it yourself or you sit down with somebody that you trust to help you work through it. You can come out the other end of it with a plan and a way to execute on that plan to get out of the situation you find yourself.
So you're saying there are choices and options available when we speak to people like you who are expert on the financial, repairing the financial disaster, I would say.
There are always options. And by talking to someone who may have a little bit more knowledge and expertise and experience in the area, you're going to become aware of what those options are. I've been sharing with Nazeera, I've been working with a lot of teachers in Forsyth County, smart, intelligent, educated people who aren't aware of their retirement options. And so just sitting down and having a conversation about it has made so many teachers in our school system aware of what they can look forward to, what choices they have in front of them. If we teach a whole generation of teachers, I mean, just think about what will come from that. Not only will they have a better chance of retirement, but they can pass that knowledge on to the children they're entrusted with our future.
Thank you so much, Kim. Tracy, you can go grab samosas and pakoras. So thanks to Cafe Bahar for providing us the wonderful food refreshments for this evening. If you know, the Cafe Bahar is just on Johns Creek, off of Johns Creek Parkway, and you should definitely try it once, but you can get the sample of it today, having their tea and the refreshment, so thank you again. Tom, before we come to your lengthy question that I have, because I have to make it smart for you. You are a smart person. I have a question for the audience. What is the other word for lexicon? Someone said it. Dictionary? Yeah, JP, wow. JP gets a present, Neelam. Great job, JP. So, Tom, the question for you is, research does show that financial education doesn't solve financial problems. So no matter how much we educate someone on you have to do this, you have to do that, it's not going to solve that problem. And research has shown that. But also it is systemic. It's because of poverty, the wage stagnation, right? So I'm talking about globally. But there are accounts such as CDA. So it's called Children's Development Account that has been developed in Singapore. When a child is born, they deposit around 2,500 in the child's account as soon as the child is born. The government does that, okay? And has been tried in Oklahoma, which seems to be working. But apart from all of that, as a visionary, are there really any solutions to having a stable, sustainable financial options for everybody? Everybody.
Well, that's shifted. You know, people ask me all the time, what's the biggest difference between now and 36 years ago when I got started doing this in the early 80s? And the difference is how long people live. And they're going to live well beyond, you know, you may have heard this before, but 70% of all the people in the world's history that have ever reached age 65 are still alive today. So getting to even age 65 is a new thing. And so, well, what happens when you live to be 75 and 85 and 95? What do you do to make your money last as long as you do? Well, you've got to be wiser about it. And so I think that's part of what's going to inspire people to not just get the financial education, but do something about it. Because you know that prior generations, you may have had the government take care of you, or you may have had your company take care of you. But there's been this huge shift to personal responsibility where it's up to you now. So you have to save your own money, and you got to figure out what that looks like. And you, if you need to make more, whether that's a second career or an encore career, if you get to be, you know, I'm in my 50s now, and when you're in your 50s, the corporate world is looking to find a way to spit you out, not to give you a chance to make more money, but it may be your best years, your best earning years, and you maybe have the most experience and most wisdom to contribute to a company. Yet the corporate world's just not kind to those people. And so it's probably going to also entail a shift to entrepreneurism, just like it was over 100 years ago when most people own their own business, so you can control your destiny that way and not just have to rely on a company to take care of you. So when you put all of that together, I feel like the situation's there. If a financial education is given and somebody understands what's at stake, that your livelihood and maybe the last half of your life is in your own hands. If you do something smart with money early enough, it doesn't have to be that much money. But even later, you know, there's an amount you could put aside that would give you a chance to actually retire and maintain your lifestyle, which is kind of the dream everybody has. And I agree with what you said about having to protect not just your income, but protect in case, you know, you would get sick or disabled, or maybe you need long-term care. You're going to need some of those, and you got to be ready for it.
Okay, Tom.
And when you do, you feel better.
So I heard the word action and not just whine about it. Is that?
No question about it. You have to do it. And I love the idea of saving money for children at birth. That would actually be a solution. You know, if you put $10,000 in an account for a child the day they're born, instead of having the family buy them all those baby gifts, just everybody, all your uncles and aunts put up $1,000 each, and that goes in an account. If they could even get just a modest return, it would be millions by the time they'd reach age 65 that would take care of the retirement crisis all by itself.
Very nice. Yes, definitely. So thank you so much,
Sure.
Tom. So Janani, and for the young kiddos out here, Saket, you have to listen to this. So this person goes to the university where he finished his diploma, and he hands out the diploma back to the registrar and says, "It didn't work for me. I can't pay the student loan, so I'm just returning the diploma instead. It didn't work for me." So that's a great. Maybe universities should guarantee that. Yeah? Yeah, exactly. But Janani, no, you can't do that for now. So Janani, when I was young, my parents always told me two things, especially my dad. He said, don't borrow money, right? And live by your means. Because he said, once you borrow money, you become their slave. So I've tried to live that to the most part of my life. Until I bought a house, which is a different story for another day. But where do you get your personal financial lessons for your life at this age?
I mean, obviously my parents handle pretty much all of my finances at this point. So yeah, I guess my parents. One note that I want to actually add about that is a lot of people make the mistake of, you know, choosing like an Ivy League school for their undergraduate degree that is actually, you might want to reconsider that, especially if you're considering further education like me. I'm pre-med, so I'm hoping to one day go to med school. So you have to think about compromises and what are you going to get for your money that you're putting in. And so my compromise was going to an in-state school, and I'm paying significantly, almost like 20% of what I would be paying if I went outside of school. And instead, hopefully going to an outside school and spending more money on my medical degree, which is worth more than my undergraduate degree, especially because, that's like what I plan to use for my future and my career. So really taking into consideration, what are you going to get out of your money? And especially our Georgia schools are great. UGA, Georgia Tech, Georgia Tech's starting salary is around $70,000. That 1 year salary itself covers all the money you're going to be paying to that school over the course of your 4-year education. So you have to really look at the returns. Yeah.
So she would make a great youth college advisor, wouldn't she? You just gave a great tip. So you basically said, in order to save that funding for future graduate studies, just go to in-state colleges.
Yeah.
Okay, very nice. Thank you so much, Janani. And Render, coming from working as a lawyer, I know you have a lot of ins and outs with the clients, with the people whom you are fighting with or advocating for the clients. Sometimes you might be standing up to the insurance companies on behalf of the clients. So tell us, for the audience and might be for the panelists, from your perspective, what are the do's and don'ts with the insurance companies, or maybe you have a personal experience with any of your clients on what, didn't you know you shouldn't have done this, or you could have done that, don't you have it recorded, do you have it documented?
It's a wonderful question. I would, to supplement Professor Carson's answer about types of insurance that you should have, that was a big question, hard to really get all of the information out there, but one that occurred to me was something called underinsured motorist coverage for your vehicles. With all of the uninsured drivers out there, this is like a policy that you buy for every other driver on the road. In case they don't have insurance, or in case they don't have enough insurance, it supplements. And it's relatively inexpensive type of insurance because it's based on the generalized population. It's not based on, you don't really have any higher risk from person to person on getting hit by an uninsured driver. So I would encourage folks to talk about that, but with their advisors. But when it comes to dealing with insurance companies, and maybe this is self-interested to some extent, the major don't is to not have a lawyer. If it's a significant situation where there are significant losses, you should probably have someone represent you. And our system of being able to hire a lawyer and not have to pay them, but only pay them a percentage or a portion of the recovery is a good system, because otherwise I think most people could not afford to have a lawyer at all. Insurance is a wonderful thing. I did not know that Professor Carson was going to be on the panel. I'm glad to meet him, and I'm sure we could have lots of conversations about insurance. I think it's generally a very good thing that we have this concept of insurance. But when it comes to a scenario where you have a loss and you would like to make a claim against your insurance policy, that insurance company has an important duty to itself to not just give away money. So they are very analytical, and they want to do a lot of diligence to make sure that they understand the nature of the claim. And so you are going to have them analyzing your situation. So you need to have someone that is just as sophisticated, just as experienced with dealing with insurance companies as the insurance company itself. And that's what I do. It's funny, you ask me, like, on these occasions where you are adverse to an insurance company, that is my daily experience. I sometimes describe myself as, when people say, what do you do for a living? I say, I fight with insurance companies for a living.
Very nice, thank you. So there are options available again for the clients to seek help.
Yes.
And they should not give up.
Yes,
and not
absolutely.
fight alone.
Yeah, because you have paid a premium. When you think about the number of dollars that of our own budgets, if you look at your own personal budget and you look at the amount of dollars on a percentage basis that you're paying to an insurance company, whether it be health insurance, auto insurance, home insurance, it is a tremendous amount of your own personal budget that goes to the insurance companies. And in many situations, you don't ever get any of it back. So when you do have a claim, you should get the maximum amount back. And I often think that the insurance companies, and some of our panelists would know the answer to this, it seems like they have all the money. If you look at the way we are spending money, we spend so much money on insurance that really the insurance companies are the ones that have it all.
So this was not a part of my preparation question, but it came up as you started talking, was something recently I heard, and any of you can answer this, is suppose you get these bills from hospitals, either inpatient or outpatient, surgery or no surgery, and you could still call them back, and the bill can be reduced, it seems. The pricing of some of those procedures can be reduced. Is that true?
It can be, and you know, it's such a confusing experience if you have health insurance and the provider of the health care, the doctor or the hospital, bills you anyway. And so you're in this limbo where you don't know, is this my responsibility or is the insurance company going to pay for this? And so it's, you know, I think everything's negotiable in life. Okay. And so if you are in a situation where you're facing large medical bills, you can always negotiate the bills.
Very nice. Thank you so much. Marjay, you have been a businesswoman. You are a businesswoman. You wear several hats. But usually they say in order to start a business, to have 2 years of income or seed money saved, right? I'm sorry, I didn't do that because I just knew it was time, and I just moved out of my full-time employment and I hit it straight, okay? And I'm on it fully. I don't know, I think it's going so well because I have the courage and the perseverance. That is your ingredients for success. But tell me, for a woman to start a business, should she wait to gain that 2 years of seed money to start a business? Or what are the successful ingredients needed to start a business?
Well, for me, it really started from, as I mentioned, my brother 20 years ago was murdered due to gang violence. I had majored in mathematical computer science at St. Louis University, so at the time I was a systems analyst, and I discovered that, you know, I asked myself what really happened to my brother, because he grew up, my mother was a single, my mother was a stay-at-home mom, and so he didn't fit the typical profile of gang violence. And so I discovered that it was media, the music he listened to, the movies he watched, the video games, it was predominantly violent content. So I made a decision to go into the film and TV business. And I think that if you're able to sell your family and your closest friends, look, I want to switch gears here, I want to make a U-turn, and I decided to go into film. And I got my parents, I got my husband, I got friends, I had some money saved, and then I stepped out. Now, it has taken a lot of time because I had to learn about film. I didn't go to college for film, but I figured it out, and that was the benefit of majoring in mathematical computer science. You hear that a lot, figure it out. And so now my quest is simply to show young people that helping people is good business. You know, so I'm in the business now. I have a moonshot called Moonshot for Humanity, and I was really emotional when Tom mentioned about, you know, where are the revolutionaries with regard to finances, because I believe that one of the reasons we're not able to live the dream that we've imagined or live the life that we've imagined is due to just that. We have not been taught early enough how to manage money. And so the moonshot has to do, that's one of the areas. But to answer your question, it really, if you can get the people that know who you are, especially family members, if you can sell them on your idea, that's a good way to start if you didn't already have the money saved.
Sure. Thank you so much, Marjay. That was an excellent pointer. Anil, the next question is for you. We've always been told, as I'm entering into and learning about financial literacy, I'm being told about long-term care, to save for retirement. I'm like, I need to take care of tomorrow and this month and next month, I'll wait on for long-term care. But I also realize that's not a wise answer, right? So tell me, how have you prepared for your retirement? I know we don't believe in the word retirement because you're still active, but were you told to prepare, or did something strike you and say, no, it's time, and I'm in 40s or 30s and 50s? But I keep hearing, if a person even starting with Janani can start saving for retirement, that's a huge success than starting to save when you're 50. So tell us some pointers for our audience or for us and those who are going to watch the video about when do you start saving for retirement so you don't become a financial burden to your family members?
So to answer the last question first, when do you start? You start from the very beginning. So it's not like a magic time that you say, okay, today I'm going to start saving for retirement. It's an ongoing process, much like education for children. But let me come back to the first issue that you raised, retirement. Some of us are permanently unemployed or unemployable, but that gives us the opportunity to do what we want to do or make the choices of what we want to do when we want to do it. So having said that, the process of saving for retirement starts very early on. You make a conscious decision that, okay, certain part of your savings, you'll just save it and not touch it. Not touch it for a rainy day either, but save it, and it grows and builds up. And if you made some right investment decisions with technically expert people, then, and if you don't panic somewhere that some of us did, then your assets keep growing and you build up on it. And the perennial question is, hey, will I outlive my funds? And that's a hard one to ask or answer, really. You also have to, somewhere along the line, consider education for your children. And that pot of money, I don't know if you keep a pot of money, savings account, or just wing it. Maybe hoping that your children will get a lot of scholarship or not. But towards that end, you have to make your own efforts and not solely depend on your children to go to guidance counselor's office and solicit scholarship, either forms, even in terms of forms. You have to be in their face all the time, gathering information and helping your children.
Very nice, thank you. So did that work, Anil? You didn't touch it on
Yes,
the rainy days?
As a matter of fact, yes. My financial advisor claims that our money will outlive us. So he wants us to spend more money, spend. He said, you're not spending enough. I said, that's the way I am. I'm spending what I need to spend, not stretching it beyond my means. But I will tell you, my daughter got lucky and she came home after 4 or 5 years with a savings account. I mean, she had built up a nest egg ready for her retirement income.
Oh, wow.
Anyway, she did well for herself.
Very nice. Thank you, Anil, for
I do want to touch on what you started out, long-term care. It's one of those necessary evils. I spent 2 years exploring it, fretting about it, not wanting it, and then finally got some with one of the companies, leading companies, and canceled it, and then went to another one. So I'll share this with you. That is the most expensive premium I have ever paid in my life, bar none.
So when did you start paying for that? Like much later or earlier?
I would say in my 50s.
Okay. So
That's when it was reasonable. Now it's unaffordable.
okay.
So you have to start, as with anything else in insurance, you have to start early.
Okay. So just for the audience's knowledge, can you just very briefly define long-term care? Like what does it entail?
So long-term care is defined, it's very specific. If you cannot perform 5 functions in your life, like dressing up, like going to the restroom or brushing your, they have a very well-defined set of rules when you can claim long-term care. And in it itself, you have to make a lot of choices, eligibility period, deductions, how the benefit amount, and that's one thing you may never have sufficient of.
Okay, thank you so much. So Tanya, there's these common myth, maybe you can bust, or maybe not, it's not a myth anymore, but is it always good to buy a home or rent a home, right? And what are the factors that lay in making that decision? And so if you can sort of talk about it, and why should one buy versus rent or rent versus buy?
So I think the answer to that has changed over the years because, at one point that was everybody's dream, to own a home. And that's what everybody worked for, and, that was the American dream. And because of the way that people's lifestyles have evolved, I think the answer today is a little bit different, that it's maybe not for everybody to own a home. People are a lot more transient than they used to be. They move around due to jobs, military. I mean, there's all kind of reasons now that people don't stay in one place like they used to. So my answer to that is if you know you're going to stay somewhere for a long period of time, I would definitely say you want to buy a house. There's so many benefits that you get out of owning your own home. And a lot of times today, it's cheaper to buy versus rent. However, if you're one of those people that likes to move around, if you know you're not going to be staying in one place, but for, 1 or 2 years, I would say you're really going to benefit from renting, because it does take time based on your closing costs and everything that you do put into buying a home, that you're not really going to recoup that. There's obviously exceptions to that. If you're, in a super hot area and the values are going up very fast, you may get your money back, but that's just not always going to be the case. And as we all kind of learned in 2008, 2009, things happen and, values can go down as well. So, it's kind of buying a home and owning a home is kind of one of those long-term plans that you want to make sure that it's a wise investment, and you're not just doing it to just say, hey, I own a home. So you just really want to consider your lifestyle and plan accordingly based on that.
So does that mean a person who's renting a home is not living an American dream?
Not at all. Not at all. Like I said, I think the American dream has changed over the years, and whereas it used to be, planting roots and staying somewhere for a really long time and owning a home is not the American dream. I think really what people are finding is that, the American dream is just living your life the way you want to live it and doing what makes you happy. And, everybody's different, and everybody's happiness is based on different things.
So do you know the basis of why my company's the tagline is "Why not"? For the same reason, because I almost answered the same thing, like, why not? Why does everybody tell me this is the way, this is the way? So the next question is, tell me, for you, Tanya, just to follow up, do clients come to you and say, are my housing prices going to go up in my area? It's like asking what Anil said earlier, it's asking like, are the stocks going to go up?
Right.
How do you answer that?
So from, aside from working in title and closing, I'm also a realtor and an investor. So I think more from those perspectives, I get that question, not necessarily title and closing. With title and closing, it is what it is. You should always buy title insurance. If you're getting a loan, the lender's going to require it. But even if you're paying cash, make sure you always have owner's title. Let me just preface that. That's one thing that's a little bit unique about insurance, I think, as opposed to other insurances, is it's just always something you want to do. And it's not going to change based on if you're in your 20s or your 60s. You should always protect yourself. Make sure you have owner's title. The cost is very insignificant compared to what you could be losing. But back to your question, from a real estate perspective, people of course want to know, hey, are the values going to continue to go up? And you can, you can look at the market and kind of make predictions, but the reality is you really don't know. I mean, there's so many factors, maybe something happens in the neighborhood next to yours. And so even though all of the signs say your values are going up, maybe some life event or tragic event or something, and therefore it doesn't happen like you think it's going to. So I think you always have to think about, the market might look like it's going to do this, but there's always the chance that it won't. And so obviously, we can't predict the future and we can't predict life. So, there's really no good way to answer that question and give anybody a guarantee that, yes, these values are going to go up, or, that this would be a wise decision. You just kind of have to make the best decision based on what you have.
Okay, thank you. So I saved the best for the last. And before we move to the taxes, I want to ask the audience a question. Do you know what the property tax accounts for? So I can give you have to give me the third part. So I can tell you the state, so it covers the state taxes, it covers the local governments, and what's the third one? Schools. Yay, Geeta's got great, guys, great job. So Neelam, Geeta is here. Neela, Geeta is here. Yeah. Great job. Great job. She got it first. So did you know that half of your property taxes go to schools? All of y'all knew that? Yeah, I just found out like this year or last year. It was like, wow, amazing. And
there are counties that do allow like over 65.
Yes.
They do not have to pay school taxes necessarily. So if you are looking to buy a home and you don't want to pay high taxes, that's something to look into as to which counties do allow for the retirement age folks to not have to put into the school tax.
And I think that's happening in Cobb County.
Yes, and in Gwinnett too, but I'm just going to add one thing to that. Especially with our Indian families, if the parents are living with you, you can add them to the title, and then you can save the school taxes if they are over 62 or 65, depending on the county you are.
That's a great, wow.
Yeah.
Now, I have a question just because this was brought up to me about that. Now, if you have your parents living there, but your children are in school, can you still be exempt from
Yes,
that?
you
Okay.
can, yes. And just to add to one more thing, what you said about owner's title, it's just one time you pay at your closing cost, just one time for the rest of your life. And you must have the owner's title to protect your house.
And is that, so because I recently bought a house, so that's why I'm asking, do you think my advocate or my attorney already asked me to pay that, or should I go back and check if that happened to me? Can you use your, mic?
Unfortunately, it's not something you can go back and purchase.
No, I'll answer that later. for you.
Okay, no, I'm asking
Also,
for general.
for general,
So is
you
that
can-
something I would ask?
No, you
when
can
at
go
the
to the
closing cost?
attorney, yes, the owner's title, you can buy that later too.
Oh, you can?
It's cheaper at the time of the closing, but later you can buy, but it's a little bit more expensive, but you can still do it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the answer to that is always make sure, because owner's title is technically optional. The lender's going to require lender's title, but the owner's title is optional. So you just want to make sure that that is being included. Typically, they're gonna include it, but there's no given that they do. So you want to make sure that when you're getting your loan or you're buying your house, that you are asking, hey, does this have owner's title included?
Very nice, thank you. So Ravi, do you know the word axe is there in the word tax? Just like the red in credit.
How do you
So,
ask the tax?
yeah, do you get that question asked? Like, how do I reduce my income tax, right?
Absolutely.
And with all the amount or especially the pension plans, the good pension plans going away, how do you suggest the best effective strategies for clients or for anyone here about the taxes that they might be missing out on that could really help them bring it back to the family?
So,
If you can
basically-
speak on the mic.
Yeah.
And before your answer, Kumar and Jawahar, there's good refreshments and tea out there waiting for you. So please feel free anytime.
So basically, from the individual standpoint and the business standpoint, we'll start with the individual standpoint. If you're an individual, you're working with a company, I mean, you can you can reduce your tax liability by contributions to your retirement accounts over there, maxing your 401ks, maxing your, you can do up to 18,500. So try to max it out. Some employees, they don't want to max it out, saying that, okay, I'll only contribute to the extent the employer contributes, which is about 3 to 4%. So it's still better to maximize, because at the end of it, you are saving taxes here. If you're in a higher tax bracket, let's say you're in a 25% tax bracket, then you have to pay state also in the state of Georgia. So you're paying 31% taxes. So if you put more, you're going to save 31 cents on the dollar on that here. So put more in the 401ks. People don't know much about the Roth 401ks. See, Roth 401k is a product where you don't get a saving now, but your money grows tax-free. So that's another option. You can do a mix of traditional 401k and Roth 401ks with your employer. So it all depends on what the employer offers. The other option, the health savings account. People are not aware much about HSAs. So that's another tool to play with. You can do about $6,900 for a family. And it's like a health 401k. So, that's another way to save taxes. Then obviously, the best way is to go through your tax form, the page 1, the lower portion is called adjustments. And the next page is obviously coming back to home ownership. Yeah. Home ownership is a way to save taxes. Things will change next year when the standard deduction is doubled. I don't know how many people will be able to itemize and claim the house interest, but things will drastically change on that. But home ownership, house interest you can write off, property taxes you can write off, donations you make to charity you can write off. So all those are deductible deductions. And as I said, 2018, when you do the taxes next year, things will change drastically. Some people, like in the IT sector and all that, if they are working for an employer and if they are getting 1099s, there is a way they can save taxes, that instead of taking the 1099 directly in their personal name, establish a corporation or an LLC and take the payment in the LLC or the corporation and create it as something called as an S corporation to save a lot of taxes. So that's another way. And obviously for business owners, there are many ways, retirement accounts and all that, yeah. The other things are basically that obviously for children, when a child is born, the education savings account, 529 plan. And one of the best tools, which I like a lot, is life insurance here. It is not understood widely because there are so many brokers who promote it wrongly and they push you to buy life insurance. That's one of the best tools to invest for your child. When a child is born, let's say the age of 1 or so, open a life insurance account and the premiums are next to nothing as such. Fund it more. Put a lot of money into it, because the more you put, the more you gain. Your agent does not get commission on what you put more. Your agent only gets commission on the regular premium as such, yeah, on the minimum premium as such. So fund it to the highest extent, and then in the future, as the money grows, you can take the money out as a loan. You don't have to pay taxes on that. In a regular retirement account, if you take a distribution, you have to pay taxes which can be humongous. It's like the concept of crop and seed. When you put money in a 401k or any retirement account, you are going to pay taxes when you after 59 and a half on the crop, not the seed. The seed is the initial investment. So humongous amount of taxes are to be paid in the future. But in a life insurance policy, if you put money now, let's say at the age of 50, 55, you need some money, you can take it out as a loan, and your death benefit will go down, and you never pay taxes on that here. So that's widely not known. People are not aware of life insurance policy as a good planning tool. And then obviously estate planning. Again, life insurance is a good tool. Gift your children. If you want to gift your children $14,000 a year, and there are no estate taxes up to $10 million from now on, yeah. So that's another way to save taxes. Yeah.
So you talked about gift tax. Can you just briefly talk about that a little further? So you're saying a grandparent or a mom can gift a child for $14,000 per year tax-free?
Absolutely, absolutely.
And
so
that can be used for?
It's up to the individual to whom the gift is given. Yeah. So it's $14,000 per head per year as such, with a lifetime limit. Yeah. So
Okay.
that's another estate planning tool as such. Yeah.
So they can pay for their college fund or their
Absolutely.
life insurance or any
Absolutely.
policies?
See, the donor does not have to pay or file any tax return, gift tax return, up to the extent of 14,000. The moment he crosses 14,000, the donor has to file, not the donee. The donee is the receiver. He doesn't have to. He has to just cash the check. Yeah.
So,
It's a gift. Yeah. The donor has to pay gift tax. Yeah. Yes, the donor has to file a gift tax return. Yeah.
but if it's a grandma and a grandpa, then you have sort of increased it to 28,000.
28,000, yeah. So it's 14,000. But let's say there are four, I mean, let's say I want to give it to my family, my brother's family. Let's say there are 4 members, 56,000 a year. Tax free.
And the gift tax would only apply if the excess over the 14 per head per year is over the unified credit.
Absolutely.
And so currently, that's at 11.2 million.
Mm-hmm.
And so the likelihood of a lot of people giving in excess of
Is not there.
11.2 million is very small.
Very small, yes, absolutely. See, I think so. I read last that only 4,000, around 4,200 people filed estate tax returns in 2016, and out of 4,200, only 2,100 or 2,000 something paid estate tax. So, I mean, in a population of 330 million, only 4,000 gift estate tax returns, and only 2,000 paid estate taxes. So, 2,000 on a 330 million is, I don't know, not even 0.1% or something, yeah.
So, Ravi, this is the final question before we go to the other panelists. Will it reach a point where every house member would be comfortable in during their retirement, or is that a distant dream?
I think so. Planning should be done from a very, I think so. That's one of the questions Anil also answered. Generally people think, I'll get old, then I'll start planning. I mean, your planning should start the moment you start working here. Don't think about retiring, think about saving. It's a savings plan for yourself. The more you save, the more you gain here. So if you save, and the best part of it is, if you put money in these retirement accounts, just imagine if you're in a higher tax bracket, you're cutting your taxes by 30% or so, which is humongous here. But people somehow, as mentioned, it's not taught in college. Money is not, how to manage money is not taught in schools at all, yeah.
Thank you so much. And Kim and Anil, I want you to tag team on this question, okay? And so how many of you all know that you already have an estate plan? So you know you already have it. It's not like what you've written down, but it's what the government has written for you. Do you all know you have an estate plan that you've really not agreed to, right? So this is the question. When Kim came to me and talked about estate plan, I said, why do I need estate plan? I don't own an estate, because coming from India, an estate means like you have it in the foothills of a big estate, a big mansion in a big farming land and all that. But Kim explained to me estate plan means for everybody. Even if you own a simple chain, a simple object, an estate plan applies to you. So that's why I want you to touch, because that's one important part I want us to talk about it, at least for the next 5 minutes, on why it's important, how many of you have it, how many have you considered it, because from working in the government, I knew what defects did. I knew how some decisions took place in a family once something happened to the mom or the dad. The government decided for their kids that was not what the mom and dad wanted to do. But because the court decided the estate plan, it just didn't work. But tell us, what does power of attorney mean, trust mean? How do we start the estate plan?
Well,
and I want you both to tag team on what you've done and as an expert from your side.
Okay. An estate plan consists of several different documents. The first document is a will. Now, if you don't have a will in place, it basically identifies who you want to receive your property at your death. It also identifies, if you've got minor children, who you want to take care of those minor children. And it tells the court who you want to be in charge of making sure that your children are taken care of and your property is distributed the way you wanted it to be. Now, if you do not have a will in the state of Georgia, your property is divided like this. It is divided equally among your surviving spouse and your children together, but the spouse's share cannot be less than a third. So you may intend for everything to go to your spouse, but if you don't have a will, your spouse ends up sharing it with your children. Now, what if your children are babies? Now you've got to get a guardian to sign for your children if you want to sell the family home that you may have owned with your spouse. And so those kinds of things can be avoided by having a simple document like a will in place. Now, a trust is another great document that serves many purposes. It's a way to keep your estate private. A will at your death is probated, and probate is a public court process. Anyone, any family member, any neighbor, any newspaper person can go down to the courthouse and get a copy of your will if it's been submitted to probate. They cannot get a copy of your trust. A trust is a private document. Your will may say, I want everything to go into my trust, and then you identify in your trust how you want your property distributed. But you should, in your will, identify who should take guardianship over your children, because that will be something that you want the court to bless. So other reasons why you would want to have a trust: if you own real estate in more than one county or in more than one state, you may have a vacation home in South Carolina or in Florida. Well, real estate is a special kind of asset, and it has to be probated in the county where it's located. So your children or your spouse doesn't have to open up probate in Florida and in Georgia. It's a good thing to have a trust that owns both properties. Also, if you've got property in Florida, probate in Florida is kind of a long process and kind of an expensive process. And so it's better to put your assets in a trust to avoid that for your heirs. In the state of Georgia, probate is relatively easy. It's not completely easy, but it's not as difficult or expensive as you'll find in some other states. A power of attorney is a document that speaks while you're alive. It identifies the person you want to make your financial decisions in the event you're not able to, because you're in a coma, because you're just not aware enough to make those decisions. A Georgia Advanced Health Care Directive is the document that also speaks while you're living, and it tells people what kind of medical treatments you prefer to have happen to you in the event you're not able to express your wishes about your medical treatment. And it identifies the person you want to make those medical decisions on your behalf. And then finally, a HIPAA release is a document that gives your healthcare agent the ability to access your medical records and your insurance records. So those are the basic documents of an estate plan that I highly recommend everyone consider having in place to not only take care of you and to make sure your wishes are taken care of, but those documents will take care of your family. In the event you're not able to express things, your family will know what to do, and they won't have to fight with other relatives. They won't have to fight in court to make sure that they're taken care of and that your wishes are followed. So Anil, I know you are an ultimate planner. So you and I have discussed estate planning and what people need to
I don't
get
know
to
about
get
what
done.
you said, but I will admit that we had some of these documents prepared long before I knew how to spell WILLL or knew the meaning. And one thing that I may add is all those documents are living documents. We have already updated, changed ours 4 times because of moving from one state to the other, or even if in the same state, laws change or your desires change. So you have to, it's a living document. They're all living documents that must be checked and changed as needed. Now, Kim has been very merciful on you. If you really want to go to a seminar presented by a lawyer that uses scare tactics, please feel free to go there, because you will be scared into doing something if you haven't done something. So it's scary anyway, but it's something worthwhile doing. And you have to weigh your options of will versus trusts and all those. They have varying costs. And depending on your need, you may opt one for the other.
So, Anil, it's also known that 1 in 5 over 50 go through some conflicts within their families based on inheritance issues. So, how can we scare them to get their estate plan?
Well, the dollars will speak for themselves. Your dollar figures will tell the story, you know, how much you would spend if you didn't have a will or didn't have a trust. And the fact that if you don't have those documents and you die, your children or grandchildren, if they are of that age, will get you back from your deathbed till you have written a will or done something. Because to me, it's a very scary situation not to have those documents.
Okay, so probably having to go and discuss either with their spouse today or with their children, because in our community we don't talk about, it's a very sensitive issue. I don't know if you know, Render, we just don't talk about these issues in our home. Because it's sensitive, number one, and we don't talk about these things, or the children just shut us off and say, "Mom, stop! You're not going to die." "Dad, stop! You're not going to die." So it's hard, but I think it's time that now we are informed. We talked about taking action. So what action can we take? I would see definitely having an estate plan, and I'm going to call each of you and find out and make sure you all have one. But because that's why we are providing this financial literacy, and probably the most important letter we would write as well, right? So if I wrote a letter and I said, "This is what I want. This is what I want to happen after I'm gone," and I sign it, is that of any legal consideration?
So that I've been told that you can be sitting right there and have a napkin and start scribbling your thoughts and sign it. Kim can certify if that's an acceptable will.
No,
No?
no.
I've been told
Holographic wills, which is a will that is a handwritten will, are not accepted as probatable documents in the state of Georgia. Now, they can be a guideline for your family members on what you want to have happen, but I can't tell you how many times I end up dealing with heirs, children, who end up fighting over their parents' belongings in even the smallest things like family photographs, because there wasn't a will or a trust, and it splits families apart. And it just breaks my heart, because I know if the parents knew that this would happen after their death because they didn't articulate their wishes, they would have burned their property. It is preferable to burn your assets than watch your children split apart as a family and not be there together, especially for things like a piece of furniture or a piece of jewelry or a family photograph. It is insane. And as lawyers, we see it all the time. I sat down with a family. The estate was actually worth maybe $15,000, and the family members, because they could not get along, fought over the family pictures. And I said, "You're going to pay me more than this estate is worth to help you mediate this issue. Please, can't you just sit down and work?" No. We want the pictures kept in your office. We want you to supervise the copying of the family pictures. And I said, "But I get paid this much amount per hour." "It doesn't matter how much time it takes." And that's ridiculous. That is a waste of money. And so you may think it costs too much or this will never happen, but you will end up saving money in the long run for your children, for your spouse. You'll end up saving hurt feelings and emotions in the long run if you just take the time to express your wishes.
Kim, so an estate plan, is it only for married couple or those who have children? What if someone is single and is not married, but they have lots of assets? Can that person do an estate plan, or whom do they see to start an estate plan? Is there another name to estate plan, or is
Well,
just...
an estate plan is kind of a generic name that just describes the documents that I mentioned earlier. But my son is 21. He is my only son. He is the love of my life. But if he's in the hospital, just because I'm his mother, they will not give me his records or anything like that because he's 21 and he can make his own decisions. So I had him sign a Georgia medical healthcare directive so he can name me as his healthcare agent. So if something were to happen to him, he has, very little assets. But I'm going to be there on the medical decisions if he's in a car accident or something like that. And so, kids over 18, parents, if you want to be involved in their medical decisions, have them get at least that document in place. If they have assets, if they have minor children, make sure they have these documents in place. They apply for married people, for widows, for single moms, for single people. You want to make sure you've got these documents in place, or at least talk to a lawyer. Most estate planning lawyers I know will do a complimentary initial consultation. Take advantage of it. Go and just talk to somebody about what you may need.
So how much, I'm sorry I'm putting too much time onto this, but this is something important that most of the audience requested for. So suppose I came to you tomorrow and I said, I want to do an estate plan. How much is that estimate cost and how much time would I need?
Well, there are a couple of ways that people can approach it. There are some online services that I work with that are less expensive. And then depending on how much you might need, whether you need a trust, whether you need estate tax planning, the cost may be anywhere between $750 to $2,500, just depending on what you need. But there is an online service if you have a very simple, straightforward estate planning need that I work with called NetLaw, and for $500, they'll do the full estate planning documents for a husband and wife.
Thank you so much. That really helped. I have a quiz in case you all went off to sleep, but I hope not because it was an important topic.
Nazeera?
Uh-huh.
I was going to tell you an
Go ahead.
example that happened to Kim and I recently. We had one of our longtime business associates passed away. In fact, this studio is named after him. And so we worked with him for 30 years, and I'm his executor, and Kim's the lawyer. And so we went up to the court to get all that put in place. Yes, and so her being a lawyer and me being curious, we asked the judge, he got us in his chambers, and we asked him what was the best thing he could remember that had happened in one of these. And so he was telling us a few stories, and my favorite one he told us was about this gentleman who was a lifelong Braves fan and Georgia Bulldog fan and Atlanta Falcons fan. And so he requested that 2 people from the Braves and 2 people from the Falcons and 2 people from Georgia, so the Falcons, Georgia, and the Braves, would carry his casket for him. And so the judge said, well, if you don't mind me asking, what would that be for? And he said, well, I want to get them to let me down one last time.
Oh.
I thought that was really good. We had a good time.
Very nice. So you can have all wishes such as that.
Everything was in place. I mean, Kim had done the documents, and so everything was in place exactly as he were still here, exactly as he wanted it for his family.
Very
Well,
nice.
and I will say, one of the things for our friend, he has a child who's a special needs child who receives government money. You want to make sure you sit down with a lawyer. If you've got a special needs child or relative you want to leave money to, you need a special needs trust so you don't mess up their government funding.
Disqualify them.
Exactly.
Go ahead, Jim.
You made me remember that there's a similar form, even though parents may be paying all the bills for college education, there's a similar release form that unless the college student signs, parents don't have a right to see if there's a balance due or to see grades or anything like that. So you made me think of that as well.
Very nice, thank you. So the quiz question for you all is, the government collects most of its revenue from individual income taxes, payroll taxes, corporate income taxes, or estate and gift taxes?
Corporate.
Who said individual? Okay, so Katie, you said individual. So the answer is individual income taxes. I think the 47% or so goes to that. So thank you for answering that. So Tom and Marjay, the question to you is, Tom, and I want you to tag along with this question. Tom, you always discussed starting a business as a maze, right? And the two key ingredients towards success is, you've said, perseverance and courage. So is there an ideal model for a business to succeed, right? Because the landscape is changing. There's more competition with more technology and with less pricing, so the clients would obviously look for the affordability. So is there an ideal model for a business, or how do you keep your passion for the business moving, and do you need a business estate plan?
Well, I think like the idea of the American dream being to own a home, there's also another part of the American dream where people like to own a business and like to be their own boss. And I recently wrote an ebook about the American dream and what's going on with that. There's a sticker shock right now. If you take and you look at the average person, the average family in America, and you look at their income, combined household income, it's not enough to begin the American dream, to have the average home and the average car and the average education for your children and the average groceries. And by the way, nobody wants to be average, but you at least want to be average. And so there's a shortfall, and how do you fill that in? Well, my opinion is that you have to be an entrepreneur of some kind. You got to start a business. You got to have, and if our business is one that, for the cost of a license, you can begin and not only get a financial education you really ought to have, but if you like the business and you do well at it, it can certainly fill that gap in and bring you up to the American dream and then some. And if you do well at it, it could be a replacement for your career, whatever that was. So, but the bottom line is the American dream is elusive. And the majority of our country aren't even close to it. Yet, if you were to ask people who, especially the new Americans that come here from other countries, why did you come here? The American dream would be one of the big reasons, to have a chance to be free, to all those things. But the American dream is beyond the reach of most people. And so that's another part of our crusade. We're trying to fix that and give people a chance to build a business as big as their dreams, not shrink your dreams to fit the size of your opportunity economically.
Great. So, Marjay, I know you are a very daring, good person. And 6 months ago, I never would have thought I could do business, because throughout my life, I just know, go to job, be the best, and get all the accolades and produce the best products, and always have good certificates and awards, until I realized I've been giving my time for many years from 7 to 7, sometimes at the cost of my family time, to the job that I was doing. But 6 months ago, I think the things align, as they say, stars and the moon aligns, and I said no more. And I said, no, I'm gonna do my own. And it took me courage, because 6 months ago, Tom, I would have never believed this is the same person that is speaking. But I did it, and I'm still doing it. And I'm enjoying the time I'm able to spend with my kids, pick them up from the school bus, and lots of other time that I'm able to do through my passion. So what do you tell here for women and who are watching? You can do it. I mean, if Nazeera can do it, you can definitely do it. So tell me, Marjay, from your experience, can a woman or a man dare to say, I'm coming out of my full-time job and my career, and I'm going to do or pursue my passion, which I'm going to make my own business and a career out of it?
Okay, absolutely. Well, I would say just the mindset, you have to make up your mind, because honestly, being an entrepreneur, it is like falling off a cliff and building an airplane as you go down. So it can be pretty stressful. But I'm on a mission to encourage kids. So my company is called Backsack. Be a corporate kid, support a corporate kid. And so I'm encouraging young people to explore the world of business and entrepreneurship, because, to Tom's point, it provides that, not only that cushion, but also the passion, because you really should do what you have been put on this planet to do and find out what that is. And once you do, it's when you step out, because I love being an entrepreneur. I mean, even though it is very, you never know, because I'm still kind of in the startup phase, and so I have to figure out how to keep my lights on while I'm waiting on that big break. But it's worth it, because you are free. You have that time to just think, to be creative, to be innovative, and to explore and then discover. And what you discover is magical if you stay at it and be determined. And what's really important in my mind is, when I feel like I want to give up, I go back to why I started. I go back to my brother. This is why I started. And I would never want any parent to go through what my parents went through, losing a child. So whatever I can do to prevent that, I stay passionate and I stay on course.
Very nice, thank you. So finally, Jim, sorry for coming so late to you on a question, but I want Jim and Render to sort of go on tag team on this question, is understanding your own risk tolerance, right? And also, I would call it sort of like a fear factor, right? What investments keeps you awake? Is it worth it? And how do you diversify your portfolio or the investments? Because if the money, the fear of losing the money is going to keep you awake, does it make sense living?
Okay, sure, great question. So I think this ties back into what we started with earlier with saving and starting today and as soon as you start working. And that's probably the most important thing to say is start now if you haven't already started. Get time value. You know, they say the eighth wonder of the world is time value of money, and let it work for you. And then I think the aspect of diversification is very important, but that includes more than just what you might initially think about in terms of stocks or bonds. So within diversification, it's also important to think about your house and how that fits into an overall financial plan. And then as well, think about what kind of job you have. And so some jobs, when you think about entrepreneurs, those jobs would be maybe less secure, more volatile, more risky income. And so if your job is more like a stock, then your investments should probably be a little bit safer. Whereas if your job is more stable, then I think it makes sense you can take a little bit more risk on the investment side. I was visiting a friend of mine. We had spring break a couple weeks ago, and I went down to visit him. We had known each other in college, and he's a money manager down in Florida. And he said I should give him all my money to manage. And I said, that's very nice of you. And I said, I'll think about that. And he said, well, what are you doing now? And I said, well, I buy and hold, and I never sell. And he said, you never sold anything in 2008? And I said, no, I've never sold a share. And he said, I've never met anyone who's never sold a share. And so I think it's just because I was lazy and I didn't think about it enough to sell. But I'm glad I didn't. And so I think you have to know yourself, and if you're the kind of person who can kind of weather the lows and the volatility of the stock market, then it's good to be in stocks, at least some. But if you're the kind of person that likes to watch and trade and be active, then more times than not, the stock market is probably not where you want to be active.
Sure. So Render, based on the follow-up as the same question, when the housing bubble burst, we saw the shortcomings of many of industries, including the banks. Usually we don't want the government to touch our lives, but this is the time when everybody started looking at the government for solutions. So how are we in the right track for, or is it being built for a strong and a resilient financial system? With the banks and the government, do you think they are starting enough not to have another burst? And I'm sure you must have met many clients during the same time. trying to put their lives together?
Yeah, I don't know that I'm really competent to answer that question, Nazeera. I'm not necessarily, I'm not at all a financial advisor. I think there's probably other people on the panel that could answer that question better than I could. But I would add to the concept of diversification between bonds and stocks and real estate. I would add diversify your money manager and don't put all your eggs in one basket. Now, I am very fortunate in that I have a childhood friend, best man at my wedding, trust him implicitly, that I have that bond of trust, because a financial advisor has to be a highly ethical individual, because they can take money from you and you'll never know it. And so if you're not fortunate enough to have a financial advisor who you've known your whole life and trust implicitly, I would say you should have more than one financial advisor that you put your money with, so that you're not just diversifying between bonds and stocks, but with individuals as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that answer. So Jasleen and Tanya, team tagging with this question is, of course, buying a home is a first investment, which you all already agreed is a good investment, real estate. But can you tell, we've heard about predatory lending, where the whole problem started. What would you say to become a well-informed consumer, right? If you can answer to that. And Tanya, underwriting. So when I want to go a little bit personal on this, because when I started buying a home, the senior loan specialist started asking me tons and tons of questions for various some of the reasons and things that I was going through. And I said, I can't take this anymore. And I said to the loan specialist, and I wrote an email to this loan specialist, and I said, can you forward this to your underwriter? And I said, I am here. I don't have any debt so far. I have a very good credit score. And I am the perfect law-abiding citizen. I've ran for office, so I've given my civic responsibility back. And you are questioning me on these many questions as if I'm going to be running away. I'm your perfect candidate. If you can give me a loan, a mortgage, whom else is eligible here? So that's exactly what I wrote. I said, I want you to forward this to your underwriter. And within a week, I got approved. So I know that doesn't happen often, but I wrote it emotionally. So I guess emotional doesn't play a part in your role as an underwriter, but I just want you to see what are all the other things that go on beyond buying a home.
I'm going to answer this question, and then she can add to it the second question first. So before the market crashed in 2008, if you put 20% down and your credit score is over 700, we would not ask any documentation. We would take you to closing in 2 weeks. After the market crash, they don't do any bad loans, period. If you're a good loan, like you have a good credit score, you qualify, assets are in line, everything, I mean, we still need everything except your DNA. So, I mean, we
That
need
might
to
be
know-
coming.
Yeah. So we need to know why that deposit you made in your account for $200, even if you make $100,000. So usually we like to prepare the clients before they buy the house, that 2 months of bank statement has to be clean. We need your pay stubs, bank statements, your credit has to be perfect. And there are multiple programs like 3.5% FHA loans, conventional loans, jumbo loans. They have all their guidelines in place, and you just have to educate your buyer to follow those guidelines so the process can be smooth. And talking about the predatory lending, I mean, I don't think so any of the banks are doing that anymore. I mean, if you are not qualified, you don't get loan, period. And unless you want to go to a private lender who will charge you 20% interest, which I don't advise at all. And the other thing is, one thing I would like to add to it is fixed versus always choose a fixed interest rate. Unless you, I mean, even if you're doing it for 4 years, 5 years, especially when the interest rates are going up now, every quarter, it's good to have a fixed interest rate and peace of mind.
Can you expand on that?
Yes, so ARM is like, suppose it's a 5-1 ARM. So the interest rate is fixed for 5 years, and after that, the interest rate would change every year depending on what the current market rate is. So I mean, I've heard somebody was telling me, I think Tanya was telling me that her grandma had the interest rate of 18% back in the days. But now interest rates are into fours, like today 4.375, 3.99, depending on what program you have. But down the road in 5 or 10 years, you don't know what the interest rate is. So better to have a fixed interest rate versus ARM.
So
Well,
basically, you're saying that a consumer should attend some training classes or speak to people like you who have the
yes,
expertise
yeah, a lot of information online, and always a good idea to talk to your loan officer and explain them everything and see how you qualify. Yeah.
Go ahead, Tanya.
So just to expand on about the ARM, your plan is to live in the house for 4 years, but you don't know what's going to happen in those 4 years, and you may be in that house. Because I know for me personally, my plan was to be in my first house 5 years tops. I was there 17 years. So, you just never know what's going to happen. But to go back to your question, Nazeera, I think that because of what happened in 2008, because of the market crash, kind of like you mentioned that, they want the government involved and to help out. So that's exactly what they did. They stepped in and they came up with Dodd-Frank, which, that's a lot of, nobody wants to hear about Dodd-Frank, but it's basically a 2,000 plus page document that the government, because they got a black eye, and the government doesn't like to get a black eye, they went through and they were like, we're going to try to prevent this if at all possible. So they put all this crazy stuff together, 2,000, like I said, plus pages, that basically says that, we're going to follow these guidelines, and these are the new rules and the new laws, and, everybody's got to follow these to a T in order to try to prevent this from happening again. And so that is why, kind of to explain that, they do require so much information because they're being looked at to follow these rules, and if they don't, the consequences can be severe. So it's really not an emotional thing, they're not just trying to find out, oh, what's Nazeera up to? It's just really, truly that there's regulation that they have to follow in order to make sure that, they're compliant and they're not getting in trouble. And,
Banks
a
get
way
fined
to.
heavily if they don't ask you for the paperwork, even if you're well qualified. The banks do get heavily fined by Fannie Mae.
Yes.
Oh, wow,
Yeah.
okay.
Absolutely.
Good to know. So Janani, what are some of the scholarship resources that are available? There are many young kids here today. What would you suggest them? You are working as a CDC intern, and you've made presentations on available resources for financial aid or scholarships. So do you have any quick pointers for parents or kids here? Where do they start?
Actually, no. One of my biggest regrets is not taking advantage of the resources I had in high school to get college scholarships. I think your guidance counselor is probably one of the most undervalued resources, especially because they might not necessarily be able to guide you academically as you might seem fit. They're definitely more well-equipped to guide you financially. So definitely talk to them to some of the resources they have connections with, because they have connections with local small businesses, organizations, websites, everything that you could possibly imagine they have under their belt. So talk to your guidance counselor, see what available resources there are, apply to as many scholarships as you can. Usually it's just a form that you fill out. Some might have essays. And you can also negotiate between colleges and have them reevaluate your financial aid package, especially coming from like a middle income family. Usually you get little to nothing in terms of financial aid from colleges, unless it's like Zell Miller or Hope, but you can use other college acceptances and how much money other colleges are giving you for leverage for colleges that you might actually be considering. So definitely look into that, and your guidance counselor can help negotiate those conversations. So, and you can get your financial aid package reevaluated between colleges.
And just for some of the young kids here, they could sort of reach out to you before we leave and just see where all you've looked into for these resources.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm necessarily the best resource in terms of financial aid. I kind of didn't take it seriously enough because I was going to an in-state school and Zell Miller covered most of all my tuition. So I don't know if I'm necessarily the best resource. I think talking to your guidance counselor would be a better resource.
And high school does have a guidance counselor for, go ahead, Anil.
So adding to what Janani said, don't forget the corporate world. They have all kinds of scholarships floating around. And I don't know if Google search will bring up any of these searches for you, like you put your own status, minority or women or whatever. Like my daughter got a scholarship for minority engineering student for something, $3,000, $5,000. And we're still wondering how she got it, why she got it, but don't overrule Google search tool as a tool.
Very nice,
Can I
thank
add to
you.
that? Another thing too, as parents, is look to your local associations. I mean, over the past like year and a half, I've become aware of so many scholarships I didn't even know existed. So I'm a member of NAMAR, which is the North Atlanta Metro Association of Realtors, and they provide a scholarship. I actually just got an email the other day. I play tennis, I play for Alta, and they have a scholarship. So make sure that you're looking into any organization that you touch in your life. See if they have scholarships, because there's so many out there that people just aren't aware of. I mean, I certainly wasn't, and it was very eye-opening to me that now when my kids become of age, that I'm gonna really do some due diligence and look into these trade organizations and see, you know, where all we could possibly get money.
Very nice. I have one final question for Ravi, and then I want us to just give quick final thoughts before we go for a break and bring the takeaway lesson panelists. Come on in. Anil?
I just want to add civic organizations, Rotary clubs, and all those organizations have a pocket of money just for applying. Of course, they have selection criteria, but that's also
possible for
available.
high school students and college students.
Yep.
Very nice. Ravi, so saving or investing, which one do you think has the higher rate of returns, of course, with the peace of mind? And saving, I believe, is just for a specific cause, and investing is long-term. Am I right? Saving is for short-term, so you save for a vacation, you save for this, but you invest for your college, your kids' college, or maybe it's almost the same?
I think so both are interrelated to each other, yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah. So, I mean, specifically, either saving or investing, you're saying? I mean, both ways. Saving vehicles that you have, the tax-free vehicles are basically, I mean, as I said, retirement accounts, savings accounts, but retirement accounts are one of the best ways to save for long term through your IRAs, traditional IRAs, Roth IRAs. At job, you have 401ks. In business, you have SEP IRAs. And there is something called there are multiple kinds of plans. One is defined contribution plans, where like a 401k or a Roth IRA or traditional, these are defined contribution, where your contribution is defined. You can contribute, let's say, $6,500, $18,500. And the other thing is called a defined benefit plan, where basically, let's say you're a doctor, or you can put a lot of money in the defined benefit plan, which is an insurance product here. And the other ways to save is basically for the child savings plan, college savings plans, and the 529 plans. So all these, I mean, you don't get a tax break on them, on the tax returns. In case of like in Georgia, there's something called the Coverdell Education Savings Account. You have a small tax break on the state taxes, which is maximum $2,000 per head per child, and 6% of that. But in case of the 529 plan, you can really park in a lot of money and through gifts and all that. And you can use it for the children's education purposes. And from child one, it can go to child, you can transfer the funds from child one to child two to avoid taxes, yeah. And yeah, these are the main retirement vehicles here. And obviously insurance and all those products are there, yeah, to save taxes. I mean, on insurance, you don't save taxes per se, but you can withdraw money in the long run tax-free as such, yeah.
Very nice, thank you. So before we go on for our break, I would like to take like 20 seconds or so from each one of you on your final thoughts on the subject today, which is from cradle to cane, and what all we've discussed so far.
Okay, so I'll hark back to something that Tom mentioned with longevity and living a long time. So the first recipient of retirement income in the Social Security program was a woman named Ida Mae Fuller in 1937. And it just turns out that the first recipient, when she retired at age 65, lived to age 100.
Wow.
And she had paid in $25 to the system and got out about 20,000. So that was a good deal for her. While that was rare for someone to live to 100, back then, it's becoming more and more common. And so all the things that I think we've talked about today, and starting early, saving, diversifying, planning, take on even more significance given that so many people are going to live a very long time, which is a great thing if we're prepared.
Thank you, Jim. Justine?
I just want to you know, that buying a house is, or getting a loan is not as hard as you think if you do your homework right. I mean, basically, there are just a small guideline list that you need to know. And the most important thing is the credit. And there are a lot of tools like Credit Karma or your credit card that can let you know what your score is. And if your score is not that good, you might want to talk to a loan officer, or you can call me and I can always pull your credit and guide you how to improve your score. So we have closed loans in 10 days. We do commercial loan, residential loan. It's not as hard as you think. We can easily do it.
Thank you, Justine, for the positive note.
So Nazeera started this whole thing with asking about happiness. And I think happiness is, everyone defines it differently. It means something different for everybody. But I've spent a lot of time as a financial person and as a lawyer with a lot of unhappy people. And a lot of times they end up unhappy because they didn't plan, whether it's not planning for buying the house or for their kids' college education or for their retirement or for in the event a loved one passes away. Making sure that you've planned and made decisions and gotten informed. It's not that will lead to happiness, but it's a way to avoid stress and unhappiness.
Thank you.
You know, when you think about, my opinion is, the world does not know how money works. And when you learn that simple thing, just the concept of how it works, in a few basic ways, it really is life-changing. And I think that if I was to give somebody some advice, I would say that you need to sit down with somebody who knows how money works and learn it. And there's never a bad time to start taking the education of how money works and put it to work for yourself. And if you get yourself in a position where you start doing smart and wise things with money, it really will change everything about your life. You know, we live in a society where so much is triggered and controlled by money, and not ultimate happiness, but a lot of things leading up to it. And so you have to be wise with it, and that comes from knowledge. Knowledge is such a crucial thing, and with it not being taught in schools and not readily available, a real financial professional that you can trust that will not only give you access to the right products, but give you access to the education along the way will change your life.
Great. Thanks, Tom. Janani?
What I would say is probably start thinking about your long term. I think Mr. Anil mentioned just winging your kids' college education is something I don't recommend. What a lot of people don't realize is how truly expensive college is. So start educating yourself and start preparing yourself, because usually parents only realize how expensive college is when it's too late, and then by then somehow you have to present $60,000 to college. So start preparing yourself and thinking about this stuff early. Long-term planning is really important. Talk to older people who know more about the subject than you do, and start preparing yourself.
Or ask the grandparents to gift the $14,000, right?
Yeah.
Very nice, Renter.
Closing thoughts. There's just a lot of information, a lot of laws and regulations that apply to these things, and there's lots of professionals out there that can give you good advice, that they deal with it every day. But I have enjoyed the comments from Marjay as well, and the things I hear her saying are not necessarily financially related, but more about your passion and having a passion for what you're doing and believing in what you're doing and relying on your family to help you find that passion for yourself. So that's what I'm taking away from today.
And Render, if I if I may, can you also just briefly mention about the story you had, the real story, the inspiring real story of a woman recently? So we usually have our conference calls twice, so this is all sort of to keep them abreast of what's going to happen today. Tell the audience the story that you just mentioned last week, or the conference call.
Well, that's the gift of what I do, is that I work with people that are in true crisis. They've had some life-changing event, either the loss of a loved one in a terrible crash, or an illness that was undiagnosed and allowed to run rampant. And one of my recent experiences is with a young woman, Cindy Martinez, who had what would seem like a rather routine illness, some pain in her back, and went to an urgent care facility. And the facility did not do even a basic physical examination of her and sent her home. And it turned out that she had flesh-eating bacteria in her shoulder blade area, and went into septic shock and ended up living, but lost both of her legs below the knee, and her right arm above the elbow, and many of the fingers on her left hand. But she is a fighter, and she's actually a Marine veteran, and she's married to a Gwinnett County police officer who's also a Marine veteran. And Cindy is an inspiration to me. We've concluded her case, but her life goes on, and I think that she's in a very good financial position. She will have the money that she needs for future prosthetics. But she is a remarkable person, and just, for example, 15 months after she underwent the amputations, she participated in the Marine Marathon in Washington, D.C. on a recumbent bicycle. And her husband, she bicycled a recumbent bicycle is the kind that you sit in and you pedal out in front of you. And her husband met her at the 25-mile mark and switched out her legs into the blade legs, and together they ran the last 1.2 miles together in D.C. And she just told me this past week that she plans to run the entire Peachtree Road race this July on her spring legs, which is just unbelievable to me. So it's a privilege to be, and as you asked what makes us happy, and to connect with someone like that and to be a part of their life for a brief period is the most rewarding and gives me happiness. So.
Very nice. Marjay.
Well, thank you, Nazeera, for inviting me to be part of this. I would just say that there is a gentleman that's part of the moonshot that I'm launching. His name is Mo Gadot. He's from Egypt and lives in Dubai. And he's on a mission to help 1 billion people engineer their path to happiness. And so we'll leave you with that. And I would also say, live the life that you've imagined.
Great, thank you.
So if your children are past that age and matured enough, in my case they are, I would invest. I think one of the better investments I can make is in the grandchildren's education in investing. So the other day I posed a question for my 9-year-old granddaughter. The other one is too small. If I gave you $100, what would you do with it without having to go shopping? Not, you can't go shop. What would you do with it? So she's still thinking. I'm waiting for an answer. And hopefully in the coming weeks or months, the 100, 500,000 can mature into a big education as well as an investment that I want her to learn.
Very nice. Thank you, Tanya.
So I think that, financial stability is something we all strive for, but it's definitely not one of those things that's just going to happen by itself. So it is something that you're going to have to be diligent about, and, whether that requires getting educated or working with people that know enough about it to assist you and guide you. But just know that it's not one of those things you can just kind of forget about, and it's going to take care of itself. So make sure that that is something that you are thinking about and planning for, and not just hoping that it's going to take care of itself.
Thank you, Tanya.
I think so. Planning is very important. That's one thing which I feel a lot of people, they don't plan, people don't discuss, they don't ask questions because probably somebody has got a bad experience with somebody, they've been cheated by somebody or so. So there are many ethical people, I think. So I think so people should, if you ask other people, they are ethical, yeah. Just having some experience with unethical people does not classify everybody as unethical. So planning, asking questions, I think so. That's I mean, you have to be involved and keep on asking questions from whoever is your professional. I think so. That's the best way to do it. Yeah.
Very nice. So thank you. Let's give a big hand to the panelists who've been here. Thank you again. We are going on a break for 5 to 6 minutes. Please have tea. The tea is still hot and the other snacks. And then we'll have Judge Kirk and Katie come on board for takeaway lessons for 5 to 7 minutes. And then we'll bring the panelists back for Q&A. Does that sound like a plan?
Sure.
Very nice. Thank you.
Okay.
I'm just glad it's not. I don't think they can hear my. Are you up here? Okay, so just a little bit further. We are actually starting now. Thank you. The 20 minutes is not ours, right?
Huh?
The clock, the 20 minutes, that's not us.
No.
Okay, good.
It's not us.
I was like 5 and counting.
No, no. It's just a brief thing. I do
Okay.
something different, and I wanted to get you back on stage. And
Oh, no, I appreciate it. Trust me. Yeah. So if you can get back to your seats. We have 2 people today joining us this evening. One is my good friend, I would say, from back in Fulton County, and even now, she is the Magistrate Court Chief Judge. So if you can, Cassandra, when you're talking, if you can tell us what the Magistrate Court does, that'll be great. And then we have Katie Kassam, who is a real estate broker from the Virtual Properties Realty. And you heard the panel today. So, Judge, the question that I want to ask you, Judge, this evening is: if money were not an object, what would you be doing today or now?
I'd really like to think that during my career, the part that I enjoyed most was working with foster children. I'd really like to think that I would either be having a group home that involved an educational component, an enrichment component, something that would actually strengthen children to make them better citizens, as opposed to some of the foster homes that I had seen. If I was not doing that in a foster home component, I would look to continue being a child advocate attorney. That was one of the joys, or a juvenile court judge. That was one of the joys of my life, being able to connect children with responsible adults and caring adults. And so that would be something.
So as the chief judge in the magistrate court in Fulton County, do you see cases where people come in because of financial claims or insecurities? And have you ever thought, darn, didn't you know?
Right. And so I'm glad you asked that. I was taking notes as the first panel was on, and there were several instances where magistrate court intersects. There was the discussion about the auto liability, the underinsured drivers, as well as the bad credit. And so what magistrate court does, it is a small claims court, less than $15,000. We also handle garnishments. We handle dispossessory, so landlord-tenant cases. So a lot of we were talking about renting a home. Whether you are a landlord or a tenant, you would come through magistrate court to handle those disputes. The other thing magistrate court does is on a triage type basis for the criminal side. So we handle criminal as well as civil. On the criminal side, what we do is 24 hours a day search and arrest warrants. So whether or not the police can actually issue that warrant, they need to come to a magistrate and make that get verified. The next thing is, once the individual is arrested, they must come to jail. At jail, their first time showing up is again before a magistrate, and so that first appearance is held at a magistrate. The other thing that the magistrates do, which is very important, is help get people out of jail. And I say that because we do, after first appearance, we do all purpose, which means this is the opportunity to make sure that the accusation is timely filed, the indictment is timely filed, and either the defendant is given an appropriate bond or the defendant remains in jail because of the safety of the citizens. So that's kind of a high-level overview about what we do.
Great. Thank you so much for being here and taking your time off. So Katie, I've seen some of your Facebook posts, okay? And I know it's hard sometimes doing our job. What is the most challenging situations as an expert you faced with your clients, especially if they're looking for a home? So you think that it's going to close tomorrow and it doesn't happen, they retract. So what do you think and how do you address that?
Well,
Oh, you're fine.
had a situation just last week where I had to terminate a sale on behalf of my client. I was representing them on the purchase of a home, and lo and behold, they were late on their mortgage payments on their current home. So that is a very big no-no, and to obtain a loan once you have been late more than once is extremely difficult. So they are going to have to wait at least a year to have a clean mortgage record. So very important to be timely with mortgage and rent payments. And also, just because it doesn't show up on your credit report doesn't mean that the lender is not going to pull up that information and look for it to verify that that information is correct and accurate.
So I asked this to someone this morning, but they were not able to answer. So what is the real in real estate? So is there something called fake estate?
The real in real estate.
You don't have to answer that. I'm just teasing you.
Well, the fake realtor would have come up with something.
Okay, that's a good one. So, Judge, final question for you. What is it that you've learned over these years to be about happy and successful life that you didn't know when you were 20?
Coming straight out of college, moving into law school, what was very important for me was career success. And so that was career success at the, at the risk or at the burden of my family, at the burden of my friends. And what was most important for me was billing whatever hours I needed to bill in order to make that job happy, was doing whatever it was that boss at that time required in order to keep that job. And so having become an adult and having seen people die at jobs and be replaced immediately, having seen illnesses cause people such great distress, what I've realized is that I need to take care of me. And part of that is making the job happy, making the job complete, and doing the best I can, but not living the job 24/7. And so that's one of the biggest things I've learned from my 20s.
And this might be sort of a little bit personal, but maybe it'll help all of us, for both of you, is if, I don't want anything to happen to any of us, but if something was going to happen to us, do you think, let me include in, our family would be able to put it all together by themselves?
Well, I'm married, so I have great support from my spouse, and he actually would make sure that my children are well taken care of.
So you have an estate plan, and you've sort of laid out how and what and whys.
Yes.
Very nice. So that's one positive thing about being an expert in the same field. Great.
Right. And so for me, I have a very streamlined life. As I mentioned, it's just me. That makes life very easy. My home is sufficient to be paid for through whatever my 401k is, so that takes care of that. In terms of my niece and nephew, if there's anything left, it's up to them, but my mother would take care of everything. So yeah, streamline.
Very nice. So thank you for both of you. Before
Thank
I
you.
bring the other panelists for the questions, so thank you for your time, and thank you for letting us know what the magistrate court does. And Katie, I know it's hard sometimes, but I see you're an inspiration and you keep going. And that's the message we want to give to especially the women owners or realtors, that one way to release the stress out is keep moving.
Absolutely.
Right? And with the support of the family.
May I make one more announcement? I do want to tell you all that there are elections on May 22nd. I know everyone's worried about the primary. I would ask that you all vote down the ballot. It is at the local races that you are most touched. And I say that not simply because I am running, but because there are other people that are running as well. And so I would ask you all to vote on May 22nd.
Very nice. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. So can we have the panelists come back so the audience can, we can do the Q&A? Anil and Ravi, and I know Render, our attorney, had to leave, so I'm going to move one chair away. We can play musical chairs. No, it's Marche. So I know you have learned a lot today, I'm hoping, with the information that was provided. But what are the questions for the panelists? Do you have any questions for the panelists? Dr. Neil, I know you go ahead. Dr. Neil, and then Swarna Arora. Go ahead, Dr. Neil, first.
I think the answer to the first question you asked.
Here. You can speak on it.
Sure. I think it was an excellent seminar or conference. I'm Dr. Neil. I'm a retired cardiologist, retired about 4 or 5 months ago. And also I'm the owner of a community bank here in Suwannee. So to answer one of the questions that you posed before, are we better off financially with the big institutions after the Dodd-Frank? Yes, definitely we are, but not completely. With the present administration, we're gradually going back to what were before because of the loosening of a lot of restrictions. Coming to the financial crisis we all had in 2009, it is nothing to do with the community banks. In general, it's nothing to do with the banks. It was mostly with the investment banks or the investment banking portion of the big banks that got us into trouble, along with the mortgages. And an observation, I think everybody answered excellent questions regarding happiness. I think my feeling is this happiness is a state of mind. You decide whether you want to be happy or unhappy. Whether it's morning, afternoon, evening, nighttime, I think it's a state of mind.
Very nice. Did anybody have any comments? Okay.
Very well said.
Yeah. Thank you. And one more question that was asked during the registration process was, is it better to stay in a low-cost country during the retirement phase? Any of you all can answer that?
I might share some experiences or thoughts, not necessarily my own experiences, but together with a friend that was here.
Speak on this, Anil. Yes, speak on that.
So together we found that as far as healthcare is concerned, it's best to avail of it where you live, for the reason that if something should happen that you cannot be cared for in the low-cost country, then you are stuck. Now, I know that there are countries where people fly in and have a tour come medical care, and generally the experiences are good, but in those few instances where you may not have that kind of a safe environment, your recovery may be delayed, if not happen. And there are good doctors, good facilities everywhere. So I'm not sure what a low cost really means to you. Is it going to India or Brazil or somewhere where the level of care may be at par with US, but may not be? Whereas here at home, in your environment, you're safe and secure.
I can comment on that. For a while, I lived in a non-urban area. I now live in an urban area. I think healthcare is the most important. More rural you go to, less is the quality of care in general. There are always some good hospitals, but in general, bigger the hospital, better care you get. And also, if you go out of the country to get care for an elective surgery, something like that, if something happens that you did not expect to, you do not have any recourse. Let's say you go to India and have surgery. and you have some complications. You cannot call the doctor over there and try to get a cure. You come back here, other doctors will have a very difficult time to go back and see what was done, what went wrong, and that's a very big issue. So the cost of living may be cheaper, but the cost of care gets very high.
Go ahead, Kim.
Along those lines, two experiences that we've had. In regards to dental care, my son had his orthodontics work done in India, came here for good, and all that was done was null and void, had to start from scratch. Likewise, my wife 2-3 years ago went and had some root canal and this and that. And when you come back to your own doctors, they said, this is no good. We have to do it all over again. And they did.
Yeah.
So those are the situations you face. If you're living there, then it's well and good. You don't have a choice.
I think
But if you have a choice, my personal experience and advice is to take care of it here.
I think to give a stark example, if somebody were to drop with a heart attack or stroke right now, I think your chance of surviving and recovering and being back on your feet and have a productive life is very high here. Imagine you are visiting India or you're staying in India and you drop dead or you have a heart attack or a stroke, your survival rate is extremely low.
Okay, very
Not
nice.
only that, one final comment. Unlike here, at least in India, you have to come up with the money up front. Before the treatment starts, you have to go to the deposit counter and make a deposit before they will even touch you.
I can talk for an hour about care in India.
Go ahead, Kim.
Well, and my response to that was going to be healthcare. And I absolutely defer to the cardiologist in the room about where you're going to find the best health care. And it can be expensive in the United States. And long-term care insurance can be expensive. When it was originally invented, people didn't live much past 65 or 70. We didn't have the medical advancements that we have today. But I think the good news is that the insurance industry, and please chime in, the insurance industry has innovated in this area of long-term care. And what you looked at maybe 5, 6, 7 years ago is a lot different now. And rather than underwriting a long-term care policy just on the long-term care piece, they're now attaching it to life insurance and underwriting as part of life insurance so that the costs are lower for the client and they can use either that death benefit as a death benefit or as a long-term care benefit. And so the industry is trying to keep up to help us keep our costs down, which I think is very important because we are, there are medical advances. We are living longer. And I would rather be in a country where the cardiologist in the room says, this is where you need to be if you have a heart attack, rather than in another country that may be touted as a great retirement place because it's low cost.
Very nice.
Did you want to add something?
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying. The challenge with the long-term care that was started, around 30 years ago, those policies, the insurers vastly underestimated the future costs associated with those policies and the risks that people thought they had transferred to the insurers. People sadly learned that the insurer reserved the right to raise future premiums. And so the idea of hybrid, combining two different types of risks in the same policy more recently makes a lot of sense.
Very nice, thank you.
Well, and just one more thing. If you do have long-term care insurance in the United States with a U.S. insurance company, they usually won't make the payments outside of the United States, or they put a lot of restrictions on them. So if you currently have a policy and you want to travel or you're thinking about moving to another country, be sure you look at the policy language to see whether you can even receive the payments if you're outside of the United States.
And if you are a senior citizen, Medicare does not cover the expenses for the country.
Sure. I know, Tracy, if we can gather the things. Tracy has a question.
Big question.
And I think your mom had a question too.
Mom first.
Yes. And then Geeta? Okay, it's covered. Salil had a question, I think. Someone raised their arms. I'm looking who. Go ahead.
I want to know how much it costs to cremate, and how do we put the money aside so that the kids know where to get that $5,000 or $7,000 for cremation and a fee to the priest and all that. How do we do that?
Sure. So she wants to know about the funeral cost service.
Can I answer that?
Yes.
At least partly, if not totally. So there are
Can
several.
you hold it? Yes.
Sorry. There are several funeral homes that you can investigate. And as with anything else, the total cost depends on a menu-driven list. You want this or that, you want this or that. But, and prepaying, I was advised, is not a good option. My financial advisor did the whole thing, and he says, don't worry about it. When the time comes, there will be money to pay for it. Prepaying and getting that little higher interest return is not worth it. So there are a couple of funeral homes that most Indian community go to, and one of them you could just do a little tour and get your own opinions on it. I've done it, so.
But do we have to go first and tell them that we want our bodies to be brought into this home, or we just die and dump the body there? We have to find out.
Well, after you're gone, it won't matter, but surely your children will know what to do, or your survivors will make the right decision and take you where you would like.
But I think the main reason for this is open communication and knowing our wishes known to our children. So I guess that's the part she's asking, like how should I know my wish known to the children, or where would I like to go? Or
I don't know if you want to document it, but late last year I had an open chat with my son, and I told him kind of my desires, and whether he fulfills them is up to him. Like cremation or electric or all that, and taking your ashes to India and all those things, come into play. So it's your own personal wish. You can share it with someone, but I don't know if there's a way to write it down as a legal.
Yes, there is. So you can put all of these wishes in legal documents, and you identify a person in charge who's responsible for making sure that your wishes are taken care of. The other thing that I recommend to a lot of clients is, in addition to life insurance that may provide a death benefit to cover your debts and take care of your family, to provide for your children's college in the event you're not there, to cover long-term care insurance, I recommend to people that they consider something that we call final expense coverage. Final expense policy is a small policy that's really just there to cover your funeral, to fly your ashes to India, to fly your relatives from India to the United States for your service and put them up. The biggest difference between, and I tell single moms this, the biggest difference between final expense coverage and regular life insurance coverage, other than the cost and the amount, is a life insurance coverage. The insurance company requires a death certificate. And sometimes that can take 4 to 6 weeks to get. But you want your relatives to go ahead and take care of your service, whatever that may be. A final expense coverage will pay typically within 7 days of death. No death certificate required. So you might want to look at getting $25,000 in coverage so that your child, this is what I tell single moms, so that your child has the money to fly in your relatives or fly you to wherever it is that you want to be buried. They have access to the money immediately because your bank accounts are typically frozen at your death. And so they've got access to funds to be able to take care of this precious thing about saying goodbye to you. And so in addition to being able to have legal documents that identify what you want to have done, if you get a final expense coverage, it pays much quicker than the larger life insurance death benefit that's there to take care of other things. This is really just to take care of your wishes for that saying goodbye.
One final question from me. We are planning to visit India. For God forbid, something happens there, we die there. How does this happen? We cremate the body there, get the certificate from there, and what?
I actually work with a company called Everest that in addition to providing final expense coverage, they have a concierge service. So we actually, in our company, we were all on a company trip in Hawaii, and one of our Canadian associates had a heart attack and died while we were on the trip in Hawaii. And Everest came in because he had this final expense coverage and flew his remains back to Canada so that his family could, bury him there, took care of everything. So
We're not talking about burying, we are talking about cremation now. We are Hindu and we're not talking about burial, we are talking about cremation in
So
India.
Right.
So however you want it,
Right, however you want it, you can express your wishes, whether it's burial or cremation, or you want to donate your remains to science. Whatever it is you want done, you can express that in a document. And if you want to go that extra step, to provide a pool of funds to make sure that those wishes are taken care of, and that your relatives who are going to be grieving you don't have to worry about money or plane trips or anything like that.
Okay, thanks. Someone else had a question.
I had a comment.
Okay.
Things that are not covered by the will and the estate, there's a thing called as green box, and it has got 23 questions. You answer them before your death, and once death happens, the family can open it up, and there are all the instructions written down that makes the life of the family extremely easy.
Okay. So Tracy, can you hand the mic to Mr. Bajaj? And then I know you also had a question though, Tracy. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Neal, for the...
Hi, I'm going to give you a little bit of my own personal experience. We went through some hell in the last 3 years. Do not procrastinate. We, especially people coming from India, we do have a habit of procrastinating everything. And do not ever think of saving $200 on the legal fees and do your own will. It is not advisable and it's not in your favor to do it. Spend $200, get a good attorney to do your own will or estate planning or whatever. Because we really paid big price. My wife passed away 3 years back, and we really had to go through hell to get her, had properties and everything transferred in children's name. So please, for God's sake, do not think death is going to happen to somebody else. It can happen to anybody, anytime. True. And do not procrastinate at all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bajaj. And I think that was one of the main goal this evening session was about, and you just conveyed it in simple terms, what we are trying to get the message out. So thank you coming from you. It really helps from your personal experience. Thank you for that comment. Go ahead, Geeta. Why don't you get the, can you speak on that thing? Yeah, hold on.
Nowadays, the children can convert their religion after marriage or out of their own choice. It's good to express how you want to be, whether you want a Hindu ceremony or they have a right, because afterwards, the spouse might want a Hindu ceremony, but the child might want another community service. So that's something, if it's important to you, is to also put it in the thing that how do you want your last rites to be conducted?
Very true. So is that a part of the documentation as well?
Yes, you can absolutely include in the documents. It's up to you. When I work with my clients, whether exactly, if they're a veteran, they may identify exactly what kind of service they want as a veteran and where they'd like to be buried. For cremations, you can identify exactly what it is that you want to have done in your documents, and you identify that executor of your estate who's in charge of making sure that those things are done. and the court holds them to that. Have you made sure, have you followed the wishes of the deceased person?
Very nice. Any more questions? Go ahead, Tracy.
The POD, or pay on death, or TOD, transfer on death, is outside of probate. And so it is effective to transfer property to somebody without having to go through the probate process. Just be careful if your POD or TOD is a minor child.
Very nice.
Right.
So if we have no further questions, I would like to thank the panelists and for you all to be here. I have put out the next session for April 28th. It's about being a migrant or immigrant or an immigrant or a citizen, since we have been talking about it a lot. And how does just being your status differs you from what you offer back to the community? And we're going to have advocates and lawyers and people who experience some toughness based on their immigration status on the panel. So I would send an invitation right now to all of you. But thank you so much for being here. Before your leave, I would like some of our, I'd like to name a few of the attendees to come and hand over the gift mementos as a small gift, but thank you for being here. And just to show that this topic is important and you all have so many things to do, but you chose to be here to educate on various life stages and what is important. One thing that I got out from here is on the life insurance. If you don't have one, just don't take it light. If you, when you're gone, be beneficial to your family at least. And you can sit that and do it with any of the financial advisor. And then on the other thing is about the estate plan. Definitely send this message to 10 more people of your people whom you care, your friends, your network. Sometimes we meet so many times at coffees and dances and cultural programs. Start important topics like this, because every day I see the misery that are some of our, especially the Indo-American community goes through of we didn't know. So that was the reason mainly we want to open up and start talking about those topics that we push it under the rug. It's time that it all comes out. In the path to financial security, don't give up. Even if you're in a financial disaster status, there is an option to make a turn or a curve anytime. And can I pass the good news, Tanya?
Sure.
What you just decided? Can you let the people know what you just told me earlier?
So I was telling Nazeera that I actually made a career choice. So I'm going to be leaving my full-time job to go and do real estate full-time. And I told her, I'm kind of been struggling with this decision. And, just hearing her talk about her experience and, the other panelists up here really kind of makes me feel like that was a sign that I am making the right decision, and makes me feel better about it. So.
We wish you only best success. Thank you. Anoopji, if you can come on and just hand a few gifts to our panelists.
I was telling Nazeera the happiness today I have is sitting with such nice people and a good friend.
Yes, to Jim and Jasleen. And it's his belated happy birthday, Anoopji. Can you look for the picture? Sing a song? Sing a song. Next, Rajanji, are you here? If you can give it to Kim and Tom. Anand, I'm calling out those people whom I don't get to see much, to Janani and Marjay. Dr. Neil. To Anil.
Thank you so much.
Geeta. Geeta, come. Or both of you come. Geeta won't do it alone.
No, Ravi is his friend.
Oh, okay.
Judge and Katie. Katie here. Katie left. Okay, Judge. Thank you so much again. Yeah. Thank you so much. So again, thank you again for coming. April 28th is our next session, and we appreciate you being here, and thank each one of you for being here.